Welcome to Look, Listen, Laugh. Now, my guest today is far more than just a stand-up comedian. He's an award-winning director, he's a writer, he's published children's books, he's got a children's TV series, he's worked with some of the titans in the entertainment industry, and we're going to delve into some of his interesting choices for his favourite film, album, and book. So enjoy my conversation with Gary Eck. Well, we have a special guest. Not only is it you, Gary, it's also an Ewok.
It's close to an Ewok, isn't it? It's this is Susu, everybody, and she's 12 weeks old.
And the new member of the family.
Yes, gets me up at 6 o'clock every morning.
Yeah,
for
nice.
pee and poo.
Nice.
Double whammy.
Double P, yeah. P squared.
I just thought I'd put her on because everyone loves cute dogs.
That's
and
true.
I just want to get your viewership up massively.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We've just spiked now. This is
Yeah.
probably going to be the most viewed out of all of the podcasts I've done.
Well, when she starts singing
Yeah.
and tap dancing, so this is going to be, we'll put it down. I'm not sure what's going to happen. She's probably going to run to you, or she's going to run
we'll
back.
see.
Let's
See
see.
what
Yeah,
happens.
straight
to me.
Joel.
Straight to me. Hey, little one.
Yeah.
So, Gary, this is great. It's always a joy catching up with you, whether we're walking in the street, randomly running into each other. That seems to be our superpower.
It's pretty much wherever every time I meet you is just randomly on the street.
Bumping into
Yeah.
each other, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have a long chat. Or sometimes we'll go for a walk and just keep on chatting.
The walk and chat, totally. Yeah, I think the last time was probably pre-COVID, wasn't it? Just
Actually, no, it was during COVID.
Oh,
It was
during
in
COVID.
Balmain.
That's right. I went
Yeah.
to the chemist and you were in the chemist.
Yes, and then we took a walk down the Thames Street Wharf.
That sounds very weird and
It,
dodgy,
it does.
doesn't it?
We met in the chemist and then took a long walk in the night together during
my
the
God.
lockdown.
Crazy.
But the first time I ever saw you, though, was at Harold Park
Oh,
when I was a
okay.
teenager.
That's right.
When you were doing the show with Anthony Murr and Akmal Sali, or as he was then known as Peter.
Peter?
Peter
Was
Sali?
he Peter then? I think
He
we
was.
might have changed his name to Akmal by then, I reckon, when we did the stage show.
No, it was Peter.
You sure?
Definitely
Okay.
Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, because I met Akmal, Peter, when he was opening for The Amazing Jonathan.
Right, yeah.
And then he said, look, I'm doing this show with the guys down at Harold Park.
okay, yeah.
And that was the classic shows that you did. All Aussies are Boofta, Bound and Gagged.
Yeah, the same
and Hoot.
show,
just different
just
titles.
renamed. I don't know why we kept changing the name. Like, I mean, All Aussie Abufta was a really funny tag, and that was Akmal's line.
Yes.
You know, because it was a piece of graffiti that he saw.
Saw on the toilets.
Yeah. All Aussie Abufta, all of them. And then we changed it to Bound and Gagged because we wanted to do a live sketch show. We wanted to film it.
Right.
And we just thought All Aussie Abufta is a bit random, a bit weird.
Right. But that's the title that sticks with so many people. Like many people I know of that would see the poll posters too.
Yeah.
Because because to let the viewers and listeners know, it was a sketch comedy show meets stand-up. Like you each would perform, your own set of stand-up within the context of these different sketches. And
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. It was at a time when no one was really doing a live sketch show.
Right.
And Akmal and I, we just loved the idea of coming up with sketches, but there was no real place to perform them because it was just kind of pure stand-up. And then at the Harold Park, they started doing weekends. And I think it was Mark or Simon or whatever, who guy ran it, asked Akmal, hey, do you want to do a show on the weekend? And I goes, oh, well, why don't we do a sketch comedy show? And then he said, Gary, why don't we get Gary? And then we invited Anthony. And we didn't have anything, but we just started to kind of create.
So, had you done sketch comedy before that? Like, because I know that you'd done improv back in the day when you were younger, but in terms of, like, had you guys written sketches together before? Or?
Not really. I mean, I'd done radio, so I'd written a lot of radio sketches, and I was in love with Python, as was Akmal. And so we kind of had the same sort of sketch comedy brain. And so to come up with ideas, I think we used to come up with ideas anyway. And then just thought, what, now let's kind of write them and see if we can, actually make them funny. And it was such a great I really do miss that era of just doing live sketches.
Yeah, it's funny. All three of you say the same thing.
Oh, do you?
Whenever I talk with Akmal, he says, "God, I miss those days. You know, we had such a great creative dynamic." Anthony Mercer says the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's time for a reunion of you
Well, it
three.
was. I mean, some of the sketches even hold up today. Like, I mean, we're talking what 25 years ago, more.
Yeah,
Maybe 25 years ago. That scene where we'd come out and we'd all be doing this.
yeah.
And it's in darkness, or semi-darkness, and the audience is going, why don't we do this for about like a minute at least, just going like this.
Moving your hands up, your arms back and forward, around your head.
And then the spotlight comes on and we all come rushing to it like moths.
Yeah,
it was
a great
laugh.
reveal. Yeah, it was because it was. I used to love that bit because there was a surreal element. Like everyone, like, what are we watching here? What are they flapping their arms around their heads?
Yeah.
What are they? And then when the light comes on, the revelation, and then and that was like the perfect example for the style of humor that was in that show. There's this absurdist, but with a big payoff, as opposed to be absurdist. That's clever kind of thing. There was a genuine laugh that came behind that absurdity.
And the laugh, it was all based on the timing. So the light had to come on. We all had to rush, being moths, and then it had to go off.
Yes.
Like if you kept the light on too long, the audience went, "Oh, now this is just stupid."
Yeah. Yes.
Like they didn't know when the gag finished. So we had to make. It took a while just to get the timing. And sometimes when the timing was wrong, whoever was doing lighting, we'd go backstage.
You ruined it.
The moss didn't work.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with doing like sketch comedy when you're not doing straight stand up with the timings on your shoulders. And the only thing that really upsets that is someone drops a glass or someone sneezes right before the punchline, whatever. But with that, it's like, you've got to have everything spot on. So it's like when you watch the Umbilical Brothers, when Michael Walker used to do he was like the third umbilical brother, you know? It's like, the timing had to be spot on in order for the gag to pay off in the end. But you would have great stuff like you would have one part of it that was like slides that would come through, like how to cook a baby, don't overcook it.
You remember it more than I do.
Well, I saw that show. I lost count. Like I was, I don't know if you probably noticed, but I was there all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'd hang out backstage and be like, "Who's this weird teenager hanging out here?" Right? You know. But it was, even for my birthday, I invited all my schoolmates along. So there was all my schoolmates came to see the show in Harold Park, and I was just like I like comedically I loved it, but just watching the structure of the show and then watching the dynamic of each of your style of comedy compared to Akmal's, compared to Anthony Mercer's, but they all complemented each other so well within the framework of that show. You all had your own unique talents that you brought to that show, and just absurd stuff like too. There was that part where you would just come out on stage and look into the one spot and go, "Who is me?" Now this is an ad like from the 80s.
It's so random.
So random, but it was just, and I remember my mates in school just laughing their heads off at that. Like such a random like commercial. Like, what was the commercial for?
It was like, a Christian. I think it was like
Christian.
Like a Christian.
Like, church.
Who is me? That was it. I always put that on. And then once again, it was all based on timing. The lights had to go out.
Yes.
Like at that moment, otherwise it kind of wasn't fun. It was a bit like the sketch Barry. I remember Barry, a film called Barry.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
And
with,
it's like,
what was his name? The Australian.
No, it was Akmal and Anthony came out with the wheel brace.
Oh,
do you remember?
Yes.
One of the funniest sketches.
Oh, that was hilarious.
It was just Anthony and Akmal going, "Is this shit? I found you." Remember? I got your wheel brace. And it just goes on and on. And the punchline was, "It's not my fucking wheel brace." But it was all about this wheel brace. But the film was called Barry.
Yeah.
And that was just, you couldn't replicate that in a film sense.
Right.
Because it was all just
it had to be
live, and the lights had to fade out because it was all about the fading.
The dramatic,
Because as the light would fade, Anthony would turn to Akmal, and that was kind of what made the audience laugh.
And the old one too about like the old it was like the birth of Jesus.
Oh, the Last Supper.
The Last Supper. Yeah, and the whole time, Anthony's like this.
No, that's Dan McCartney.
Oh, was that Dan McCartney?
Yeah,
I was like, and he goes, "And who ordered the pork?"
Yeah.
And then. And he's got the moustache with the Hitler. Yeah,
I used to get huge laughs.
It was.
Okay, Akmal was Jesus. You go, okay, so You had the lemon chicken. You had the fried rice. Okay, hang on. Who had the pork?
And then the reveal of Hitler.
Yeah. I mean, God, crazy.
Hitler at the Last Supper. But yeah, that's what was just inspired comedy too. It wasn't this run of the mill, run of the mill stock standard. It was absurd, and that's the whole point. Had that absurd edge, but big comic payoff, which is a rarity. You usually get one or the other. You know, it's rare to see that combination pay off so big.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then you took it over to Edinburgh. You went over. You took the show.
Well, we took it to Melbourne first, and then I think we were in some obscure venue, but we won an award. We won like the best newcomers because we were the only group doing a sketch comedy show, so we kind of stood out, and all the comics really loved it because it was really different, and so we used to get a lot of love from them. And then I can't remember what the award was, but we won $12,000, which was basically back then an airfare. It cost you $3,000.
Yeah.
And so we took it to Edinburgh. We had like a 5 p.m. Time slot.
Yeah.
Like 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And we were. I always remember afterwards was the Oxford or Cambridge review show.
Right.
And it was really sad because we watched it and they were terrible. It was the most unfunny show ever.
But they're getting all the attention.
They weren't really getting all the attention, but you had this expectation because that's where Python came from and stuff. And you're like, wait a minute. But so we had a 5 o'clock time show, which was great. On the weekends, we'd get full houses, but during the week, we would get
it's the time everyone clocks off work. Who's going to be there?
I mean,
getting elderly people?
No, we'd have to. Thing is, Akmal and I would go down to the box office where they sell the tickets, and we'd pretend like we just go. I just want to check the ticket sales for tonight, and the girl would go, yeah, sure. Okay, right now you've got none, right? And then we'd have to act like, that's like not act disappointed.
That's not bad.
None, zero. Yeah. And then we thought, then we have to go out flyering.
Yes.
We used to. Our trick was to go to the backpackers that were full of Aussies and give out freebies.
Right. Yeah. Paper the room.
Yeah, and I remember Akmal went there and was giving out all these tickets, and someone had actually bought a ticket to the show. No. And they were, they couldn't, right, you're giving away tickets, they just bought one. Freaking hell, this is a rip-off. So,
but at least you had because when you do it solo like that, it's like,
yes.
When you're by yourself and you're flying, but when you got 3 of you out there, it's like,
Well, everyone's in the same boat, I remember we would run into Greg Fleet and we go, hey, Greg, how's your show going? And he would just let a whole, like it was purposely on purpose, like a gag, like all the free tickets he's giving away as well. Like, it's going really well, man. I've just,
Yeah.
But,
and did you, how many, you would have done a lot of shows over in Edinburgh during that period of time, short period of time?
I think we did the run like a month.
Now, did you find from doing the Melbourne run where you're doing close to 30 shows, doing that, did you find the show got like super tight? Did you see an improvement, or was there like that feeling a bit of burnout, like, geez,
not really, because whenever you're getting laughs, and it was a different audience, we had to change, I can't remember, we had to change some stuff, but...
Yeah, they're not going to get the Who Is Me.
No, they're not going to get, I think I did it anyway, but it didn't make any difference. No, not really. I always enjoyed doing it, because you knew there was always moments where there was a big laugh, so you're kind of looking forward to that. And sketch is different. You can't break out of it.
Yeah.
You've got to commit to it. So.
And what about the stand-up in Edinburgh? Like each of you're obviously doing the stand-up. Did you find that the translated over there, like the references and...
Yeah, I mean, we weren't doing a lot of stand-up in the show anyway, so we just picked bits that were so generic.
That were going to land, for that audience.
Knew that was going to work. And it was a bit of a trial and error. That didn't get a laugh, but that doesn't stay. I'll do another bit. But,
the next step from there then was the 50-foot show on Foxtel. So you took it to the TV screens. What was that process like for you, going from doing it live, where, like you're saying, so much of the timing and the essence of it had to be in a live environment. How did it translate to then TV for you?
Well, we thought we'd do a pilot. Like we'd just make a sketch comedy show kind of based loosely on the stage show, but then we wrote a whole bunch of specific sketches because suddenly it was film, it was TV, and we shot it on like old pneumatic cameras, like those massive,
Yeah.
you know, the cassette's this big,
Right,
like it was
yeah.
enormous. And Jason Tuddy shot it on this massive kind of shoulder camera.
Yeah.
So we shot that, and I think it's still on YouTube, called Bound and Gagged. Someone's put it up.
Oh, what, the 50-foot show?
No, our original pilot.
Of the Bound and Gag show?
Yeah.
I gotta look that up, really.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Ah.
Some guys, I don't know who got. I think a friend of Akmal's. Akmal gave him the copy of the tape, and he's uploaded it to YouTube.
Okay.
And you can watch the whole half-hour
And
pilot.
where was it shot? At Howard Park, or?
It was it wasn't shot live. It was shot. We did actual specific sketches.
Right, okay.
You know, like Coma Cop.
Yeah, Coma Cop. Yeah.
Coma Cop is just like Anthony is in a coma as a cop.
The doors.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You know, which we shot in my mum's garage. So we shot that and we made this pilot. And it's fun. I mean, you watch it today. Some of it's kind of like, you feel like it's being made now.
Right, it holds up.
Kind of holds up, but yeah, we shopped that around. It was the classic, like sending a VHS to Channel 10 with a letter going, "Are you interested in this show?" And back then they were like, you know, what, 2 Arabs and a white guy in the show called, I don't think so.
Yeah. That was before it was, you know, kind of cool to have, you know, like you say, 2 Arabs and a white guy.
Yeah, now they'd be jumping all over it.
You would have got a grant.
They were like, oh my, yeah, grant. They would have given us like 8 seasons. And, but we sort of got rejected everywhere. And we're like, okay, it doesn't matter. And then I know someone at the Comedy Channel got a hold of it. And they were looking for something really different. And they saw ours and they're like, oh gosh, you guys want to do a sketch comedy show? And then we said, yeah, let's do one. And we called it, I don't know why we called it the 50-foot show. It just kind of became the 50-foot show. We kept changing names. I don't know why we kept doing that.
And then the next step was a motion picture.
Yeah.
A film, You Can't Stop the Murders.
Yeah. I know, what a leap.
Yeah, which is great. You know, I remember seeing that at the Valhalla, back when the Valhalla was, you know, the top cinema to go and see great films. And it was, I don't know if it was a premiere or... No, it was a screening. I remember Margaret Pomeranch was there.
Oh, yeah, it was just like a Q&A.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Yeah,
and a lot of actors there. And it was... And I remember after seeing that thinking, all right, this is going to take you guys next level. You know, you co-wrote it with Anthony and Akmal.
Yeah.
And so I remember some of the scenes in that were brilliant. Like as a standalone sketch, like you and Akmal just talking back and forth in the cop car. Like I remember, like that would work as a sketch by itself. You know, within the whole overarching narrative.
Well, it's kind of how we made it actually, because Akmal and I, whenever we were doing scenes together, we'd had the script, but then we would just kind of workshop it and kind of ad-lib it and try and make it as authentic as possible.
Right.
And so we would kind of just play around with it. So in a way, it became just like a little sketch.
Right.
That we'd do, and I mean, it was huge fun to make, but it didn't really go anywhere. You know, that was the sort of...
I remember Akmal would always say, you know, it was, came out the day that the Second Gulf War started, called "You Can't Stop the Murders" with Akmal Saleh. It's a great
Akmal Saleh.
Yeah, it's a great recipe.
Yeah, I know it was kind of unfortunate. It didn't kind of get a lot of traction. I remember a comedian rang me and he goes, "Oh, Gaz, you know, guess where I am, man?" I go, "So where are you?" He goes, "I'm in the cinema, and I'm watching You Can't Stop the Murders, and I'm the only one here." And I'm like, "Well, why are you whispering?" Like, you don't have to whisper. You can just tell me. It was weird, but only, and this happened just during, it was a couple of years ago. I'm driving home, and to get into where I live, there's this little kind of Boomerang Street. I don't know if you took it to get here.
Boomerang, yeah.
Joel's in my house right now, if you're wondering. Yeah, and there's a cops doing a random breath test, right? And okay, and I pull over, and there's this young cop. He's only like maybe 28, or you just look young. And he goes, "Yeah, you drinking tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah," and then license. And I give him my license, and he goes, "Gary Egg, You Can't Stop the Murders." "Oh yeah, I love that."
Oh wow!
I said, "Oh, what do you watch?" He goes, "Yeah. My dad loved that. You know, it's kind of
inspired me to become a cop."
Yeah, it inspired me to become a cop. I thought that was so. You get these. That's what would happen. You get these really random kind of moments.
Yeah.
Where someone's kind of seeing the film and it was a cop as well. Which we played cops.
Sure. Because for anyone that hasn't seen it, it's based about this serial killer that's out there that's killing people that resemble people from the Village People, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah,
that's the. But then it ended up happening that then you couldn't land the rights to the music to the film.
I think at the time, the person who owned the rights was some French guy,
Right.
And he owned the whole rights or something, and he looked at it in some script about you can't stop the murders, but they want to kill the Village People, and
I didn't quite understand the comedic concept.
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Right.
They said no, and even if they said yes, they would have charged a fortune.
Right.
But you know, the weird thing is, like when that film came out, You Can't Stop the Murders, about killing the Village People, I was on the Today Show to promote it, and on the same bill, on the same show, performing live, were the Village People.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm in the green room with the Village People.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like,
You couldn't write that.
I said, you're not going to believe this. And I'm telling the guys, the cop,
Yeah.
I said, you know, this is insane. I'm on the show, I'm promoting a film called You Can't Stop the Murders, and it's about killing the Village People. Right? And I just said it like that.
And he didn't get it?
He's just like, huh? Like, what, you're killing us? I said, yeah, it's a comedy.
It's a comedy.
Yeah, he goes, oh, yeah. And, it's like, and then I had
I'm going to make a collect call to France.
But it's really interesting because it's all come full circle. Because I don't know, I mentioned to you before, but I was doing Will Anderson's podcast, and he said, oh, you should turn You Can't Stop the Murders into a musical. I said, oh, it would be great if we could get hold of the music.
Yeah.
And then someone who was listening to the podcast contacts me and says, look, hey, I'm a 28-year-old software engineer, and you mentioned You Can't Stop the Murders. I hadn't seen it, so I watched it, and I thought, hey, yeah, this could just be a really fun musical. And you know, I love comedy and music, so I've written a song.
Yeah. Your first instinct.
I was like, oh, this is going to be dreadful, right? This is going to just be horrendous. And I listened to it, and it was unbelievable. It was sensational.
Wow.
And I wrote back. I said, man, this is amazing. This is brilliant. I think you've done such a. It was hilarious. It was just had kind of Book of Mormon meets little, Shop of Horrors kind of vibe to it. And so we've sort of been talking, and I looped in Anthony, and we're like, maybe we could do a reboot of the film or a musical, but we'd have to get the rights. So, but I found the guy who's the cop on IMDb Pro.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and he's got his email address there. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll just email
reach out.
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember me, but
you got to make a little.
I made fun of your
many years ago on the Today Show.
Yeah,
but that'd be an interesting little documentary on the side of how to get this musical up and running.
If only I knew someone with 3 cameras.
Wow.
to do the documentary.
And well, it could all start here. This is the beginning of the documentary.
Yeah. That's the funny part. This is the opening of the documentary. Where we're talking about the make. Look, why not? It would be
because that would be a fascinating story to tell in itself. With the way it started, getting and also having 3 great comic minds like you, Anthony, and Akmal, involved in it, and having like a retrospect on what the film was to what it's now could possibly become.
It's very meta. Like I'm on Will's talking about the film becoming a musial. Now I'm on your podcast talking about it becoming a documentary
about making the musical.
about making the musical,
which
is all kind of it's kind of strange.
The next. Because you've got so much that you've done in your career, right? It's like after that, the 3 of you didn't really work together again. After the You Can't Stop the Murders film, you went off on your own, and then you wrote and directed an award-winning short film, The Money.
Yeah.
And that then took you to the States, right? The money that you won from, which it was great, by the way, too. I know I've told you that before. But that short film, just the way that it was written, but the way that it was played, because you and Dan Wiley were the two criminals, the 2 thugs, standover guys.
Yeah.
But just the way that, every aspect of it was done to perfection. So it was, and you won both awards for that, the best screenplay and best directing.
Best film, I think they just called. I mean, if you look, for those who haven't seen it, it's someone who's about to get shot and he's in a basement and they're about to kill him, and then he gets a phone call because he owes these thugs money.
Yeah.
And they're still going to shoot him, but he's like, wait, that could be the guy who's going to pay back the money, and of course they let him answer it, and it ends up being, you know, Eddie
Eddie
McGuire
McGuire.
from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah.
And he's got his mate Terry on the line.
Yeah.
Who Lee Perry did the voice for, and for Eddie McGuire as well. People
Yes.
thought I got Eddie McGuire too.
Well, Lee Perry's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Right?
he's
I think
great.
you get Russell Crowe on your
Yeah.
comedy album. That you made too. Yeah.
So we've got him everywhere. But yeah, so it's really interesting. I remember cutting that, and I was like, is this any good? Because when you're living with something for so long,
Yeah, you lose perspective.
you lose perspective.
Yeah, sure.
And then just to see it, back then when Tropfest was kind of at its peak, it was, you know, it's alive, you know, in the domain,
Yeah.
90,000 people.
Yeah, it was like the pinnacle of short film festivals.
But not only pinnacle of short film festival. I mean, more people would have seen my film than most Australians would have seen a feature Australian film.
Right.
Like in that one moment,
moment.
90,000
Yeah, no, you're
people.
right, you're
like
right.
90,000 people don't go out and go see some random Aussie feature, right?
Sure.
I mean, so more people, and then you couple that with the DVDs and then the TV screenings and stuff like that. So
You buy the Sydney Morning Herald, you get the best Tropfest films on
Yeah,
the DVD.
that's right.
Remember
Yeah,
they
yeah,
used
yeah.
to do that?
Oh, yeah,
Or
totally.
the Sunday Sydney Morning Herald.
yeah. I've still got them. They're all in that
Oh,
cupboard.
nice.
Yeah. So that did kind of open, you know, some good doors.
It was a great calling card, you know, to have had that then because by winning that you got a flight to the States to meet up with producers and possible, you know, industry people.
It was, you know, they were meant to tee up a bunch of meetings, but my producer Phil Wade basically had to organise pretty much all the meetings. And the thing is, they didn't really know, the people we met didn't really even know Tropfest, right?
Oh, right. So Tropfest is making it seem like
They
you're
just
gonna
knew they've organised the meeting with this filmmaker from Australia, and so they take the meeting because they don't know if you're the next best thing. So they don't want to be the dickhead.
Yeah, they
who
turn
are
you
like,
down.
oh my god, I said no to him, and now Gary's made, you know, Thor 7.
Yeah.
Which didn't happen. But yeah, and so, and a great piece of advice someone said to me, a producer guy said, look, there's a good chance they're not going to even watch your film. So take the film take your laptop, take an external speaker,
Show it.
and show it there live.
Yeah, good idea.
And because I'd get in these meetings and they'd go, oh, look, I'm really sorry I haven't seen the film. I go, that's okay, I can just play it for you.
Perfect.
And they're like, oh. You can see them start to sweat because they go, it's a bit like that moment when I'm listening to that guy who's written a song. They're going, this could be shit.
Yeah.
I've got to watch.
Right.
I've got to sit there pretending this is good.
Yeah.
But, I was confident. I thought,
Yeah,
they're
you
gonna-
knew
they're
that
gonna
you had
like
something
this.
good, yeah.
And I'd play it, and sometimes I'd give them headphones, and they would laugh, and they'd go, oh, this is great. You know, what else you got for us? You know, and at the time, I didn't have anything else. I was like, well, I don't have anything. Well, they're like, well, when you've got something, you know, because they can't really do anything with you until you've got something.
Right. Yeah, you got to have a script in your back pocket to go, here's the next project.
Yeah, and I was kind of saying I wanted to be a writer-director, so you can't be a writer-director unless you've written something. So, yeah, that's Susie the dog. But, yeah, so, but it was great. I mean, I think we came back, I think I came back for a thing called G'day LA, where they screened.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So they showed the film The Money at the Egyptian Theatre, 800 people, before an Australian film called Oyster Farmer. And Richard Wilkins introduced me, and it was funny. It was one of those accidental jokes. He said, "Oh, what are you doing next?" And I said, "Oh, look, I'm going to Sundance. Not the film's not playing. I'm actually just skiing." I got a huge laugh, but I was actually being genuine. I wasn't actually trying to be funny.
Yeah.
I was actually telling the truth. I was going, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to Sundance, but I'm not screening it. I'm just going skiing."
Yeah, nice.
And the audience thought I was, and then they all thought I was going to Sundance for the film.
Right.
You know, I was just being kind of, you know, jokey. But I wasn't going there.
Which is a very LA thing to do, get the buzz happening around.
But I did go to Sundance and went skiing.
Sure.
It was unreal. But yeah, I mean, it did really well in front of the 800 people. Like, it killed. It's, in fact, better than the actual feature film.
Yeah, great.
And there was
So
all these agents
you had all
there.
the buzz around. So
That
your
was
film.
useful, yeah, because then people started going, oh, we should meet. And foolishly, I met the producer of Ridley Scott's company. He's like,
Right.
I love that film. That was hilarious. You know, we should do something. You know, here's my number. And then I just didn't do anything with it.
No.
And I didn't really kind of see the significance. And I just looked back going, oh, that would have been a really good number to have right now.
That reminds me of when you were backstage at the Enmore Theatre with Akmal and Richard Branson.
Yeah.
Richard Branson was there at the show,
Yeah.
and then he goes up to Akmal and goes, "I'd love." I think Agmar smoked a joint or something, and it was a bit blasé. And Richard Brand's like, "I'd love you to work for." Oh, you know the story. You were there.
I think you would know it better. Yeah.
And Agmar thought he said, "Had you worked for Virgin?" So he just looks at Richard Brand and goes, "No."
Yeah.
And Richard Brand, oh, okay. So he writes it down on a napkin, his number, and says, call me.
Yeah.
Or this is my assistant's number. Call him because we'd like to do some work with you. And then afterwards, you said, "You idiot." He asked you, how did you want to work? And I go, "Oh no." He goes, "Imagine I just got his napkin and went, oh," like that. And then he looks across, and Richard Brand is looking at him, wiping his number on his forehead.
Or blows his nose.
Something like that. Yeah. So what eventuated from that afterwards?
Well, I went over there, and because I was kind of pitching myself as like writer-director, they were like, "Oh yeah, if you've got something, come back to us." I hadn't written anything.
Yeah.
And then when I went back to Australia, I'd been working on that comedy album with Lee Perry, the Hollywood Motel.
Yeah.
Which is like a narrative-driven sort of comedy album. And I'd also made another couple of short films. I made a short film called Final Call. I don't know if you ever saw that.
No, I didn't see, but I was aware of that.
Yeah, the guy's stuck in the toilet and they're calling his flight and he has to catch the flight to Hong Kong.
Right.
He's got these important documents and there's no toilet paper. The toilet's like, I call it, it's like Die Hard in the toilet. He's got to get this toilet paper.
Yeah.
And everywhere he goes, every cubicle's got no toilet paper and he ends up making a mad rush to the female toilets across the other side. And anyway, it was a funny film, and I was at the time. I'm just trying to remember. I was Happy Feet. Happy Feet had just come out, and they were doing a cast and crew screening, and I got a ticket to go see Happy Feet, the cast and crew screening at George Street, and I was living in town at the time. I thought, okay, it's at 6:30. I might just go to the gym. I'll go to the gym before it, and then I'll just walk over to the cinema and I'll go see the film. And for some reason, I didn't bring a change of clothes because I went in there just wearing like shorts and singlet type thing. And then I went, damn it, I've got nothing to wear. Oh well. And then what am I going to do? And I thought, what I'll do is I'll wait till everyone goes in, and then I'll just sit up the back, right? And I'll watch the film, and then I'll just go. And I think, and that works. I get there, everyone's gone in. I just wait till everyone's gone in.
Not knowing that that's what the important people do.
That's exactly what the important people do. So I'm sitting right up the back, and then sure enough, who comes in? It's George Miller, who sits right next to me. Fantastic. He's done exactly the same thing. Yeah. And I'm just sitting there going, and I look over, and then he looks over and he goes,
"You're like, George, why are you wearing your gym clothes?"
Yeah, that's right. Oh, wait a minute. And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, hi, Gary." I said, "Oh, hi, George." He goes, "Yeah, this is funny. This is what a coincidence. I just flew back from LA, just literally I'd flown in today, and I was watching Final Call, your short film, because they were playing that on Qantas."
Oh, right.
Because it was all about, because we shot it at the airport and stuff like that. And as he's talking, he goes, "I really enjoyed it. I liked it. I was wondering where I was going to go and all the twists." And then we were just talking, and he said, "If we ever do another Happy Feet, would you be interested in getting involved?" And he'd also, his brother had given him a copy of the Hollywood Motel.
Right.
And he really loved that. He really loved it because he goes, "Look, that's exactly what an animation is. You start with the voice track first. You create that first, and then you animate from that."
To that.
So he kind of was like, given Gary's done that, and he's in these short films, and also because they support Trop Fest, and they've seen all my short films anyway, he was like, if we did another one, would you like to get involved? I'm like, yeah, And I didn't excuse myself for wearing like shorts and singlet, and I reckon he must have gone, "This is pretty cool. This guy doesn't give a fuck about my
look at
film."
him. He's so relaxed.
So relaxed, and I said, yeah. I think, I didn't say I'd think about it, but I'm like, yeah.
We'll do lunch sometime.
It's so many moments. I remember then he called me in. He said, "Look, why don't you come in? We'll have a chat about this." And I went into their office, which was at Potts Point at the time, with a big Metro theatre.
The Metro, the Art Deco theatre.
Yeah, they don't own it anymore. They sold it. But it's going to be much needed apartments now.
Right.
But they didn't sell it for apartments. Someone else. It was going to be one of those Watso workspaces.
Right.
And then COVID hit and went blah blah. But anyway, I went in there for a meeting, and it went for 3 hours. Right. And I was doing Richard Glover's show TGIF. And I had to be there at 5. But it was at 5:30. It was only a half-hour show then. And I'm talking to Joy. I'm just keep talking to him, and I'm thinking it's 5:10.
I gotta go.
And I didn't want to say, "Hey, I've got to go on this radio show," because he just kept talking. I'm thinking, "Oh fuck." I've got to go, and I'm like, and then eventually he was like, okay, well, we'll talk soon. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I walk out, and then I just run,
Bolt,
and I get to my car, and I'm like, and I'm like, I'm calling the producer, I'm going, I'm on my way. And I race up there, and the show's already started, and they're doing the news. And then, I've got 5 minutes because there's 5 minutes of news and weather, and I just scrape in, I just sit down, I'm like,
Wow.
and then, Richard looks at me and the two other guests, I'm like, yeah, and Gary Eck is with us as well. And coincidentally, by that time, George has got down into his car and he's driving
listening
home.
to the radio.
And then he's listening, and I'm like, on the
hilarious.
radio show, and he goes, and then he calls me the next day and he says, look, I'm really confused because I was driving home and I heard you on the radio. Was that pre-recorded? I said, no, it was live. I had to race from after your meeting.
You held me up for 3 bloody hours.
He goes, why the fuck didn't you tell me? We could have, you should have told me. I said, no, I didn't want to be rude.
Yeah, I'm playing it cool like I do with you, George.
Yeah. But it was one of those kind of, it's weird. I mean, now you'd go, hey man, I got to go.
Yeah, I got to run. But then for your first meeting.
Yeah, first meeting. And I didn't even know if he's going, hey, is this a real thing happening? Am I working on this? It was just more of a conversation.
Sure.
I just wanted to see.
Feel it out and see if you're...
Yeah, but it went for so long, 3 hours. We had lunch and...
And then after that, you ended up co-writing and co-directing Happy Feet 2.
Yeah, so I came on initially just as a co-writer. And then they were talking about sort of co-directing, and then that became a sort of a co-directing gig as well. There's another guy called David Pears. And so... And, the idea, George was doing Justice League at the time.
Right.
So that had actually got up with Warner Brothers. So all the cast were in the Metro at the same time.
Right.
So I met everyone there, who was playing, they had Megan Gale was Wonder Woman.
Yeah, this is just the one that never happened,
This
right?
is the one that never happened.
Yeah.
Armie Hammer was Batman.
Yeah.
Who was the Flash? But yeah, big cast who kind of they all went on to do amazing things anyway. But yeah, and then that fell through. And so the idea was David and I were meant to kind of look after Happy Feet, but then when Justice League fell through, George just focused all his time on Happy Feet 2. And which, to be honest, if he didn't, I don't know if we would have got Happy Feet 2 done.
Really?
Because there's no way, I mean, Justice League would have taken so much of his time.
Yeah.
That would have just been...
Without having that extra guidance.
It would have just been a project simmering in the background, and we would have all just been sort of waiting our time.
Right.
Because that would have gone on for two years at least.
Sure.
So look, for us, it was a good thing.
Now, how was that process for you? Doing suddenly, you've done these short films and you've done your own feature film in the past with You Can't Stop the Nerves, but now doing like a Hollywood level production with Robin Williams and Brad Pitt, Matt Damon.
Well, that's all at the end, right? That's the sort of cream at the end, because you do all the hard yards, the writing. You got to write the screenplay first. That takes a year, and then you got to develop that into like previs. So we were motion capturing all the performances.
Right.
We had to create a scratch track, like doing a scratch track of the whole thing. So all this work.
You're almost making the film.
You make
before
the
you
entire
make the
film. You make the entire film.
Right.
And the scratch track ends up becoming, really solid. In fact, I found a guy who had cast in Final Call, the short film, Jordan Prosser, and he was this sort of young guy, and I sort of said, hey, do you think you could do an Elijah Wood type of voice? And his voice sounded so much like Elijah Wood's. In fact, people thought it was Elijah Wood.
Right.
Yeah, it was amazing. So the scratch track was a really solid scratch track.
Yeah.
And so by the time we get to the actual the hero, the good part, where you get to meet Ron Williams and Pink and Alicia Moore, and I remember meeting, because we flew over to LA to record Pink, who was played Gloria. That's you call her Alicia. I was telling my daughter yesterday this story, actually, because we were recording. I'd always kind of make jokes during when we were recording stuff, and I remember we were passing each other in the corridor, and she stops and goes, you are really fun. And then she kept walking.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I got the tick of approval.
I'm really fun. I'm nothing else, but I'm just fun. But yeah, and then just meeting Matt Damon and Brad Pitt, who played the crew.
Right.
I mean, it's the most surreal moment.
Sure.
Of
it's like they're speaking the words I wrote.
Well, not just that. It's just they're there. and you're kind of just seeing, and I remember we were having a lunch break, and we're just sitting out, because it was in like a voice recording studio, just sitting on like couches, just random couches, eating vegan takeaway. That was awful, right? Out of plastic containers. And I'm looking over, and there's Brad Pitt and Matt Damon eating it, and just all conversation. I'm just going, this doesn't seem right.
Surreal.
They're just happily eating this. It was crap. It was really bad. I'm thinking, wow, they're hoeing into this, not complaining, and it was weird. I remember the Haiti earthquakes had just happened, and they happened during the record, and we were recording Matt and Brad for 2 days, so we only had them for 2 days, and I think it was on the second day the earthquake happened, and just Matt Damon, he's recording, and he's just going, just excuse me a second, he's texting, because he's going, this Haiti disasters, terrible, blah, blah. And then the next day he's in Haiti. There he is on the news going, he's out there and he's trying to help.
In the thick of it.
In the thick of it, yeah. That was I thought, wow, that's amazing. But yeah, that was, and then meeting Robin Williams.
Because I remember because Robin Williams was out here in Australia, right,
Yeah.
working on it, and you were doing a gig at the Potts Point Hotel just up the road.
The Sugar Mill.
Yeah, and he came up and did a spot as well, right? He did a guest spot.
He did, because, what happened was, one of the guys who was playing one of the Amigos, Paul Garcia, I think his name is, he was going back home. He was flying back home. And so the other guy said, hey, Gary, Garcia's going home. We're going to have some drinks. And he goes, I said, look, you're not going to believe this. I'm working tonight. I've got a gig at the Sugar Mill. I said, and they were all stand-ups, right?
Yeah.
I said, look, why don't you come down and you can share my spot. You spare my headline spot. We'll all do a bit.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah, that sounds really fun. Let's do that. And as I'm saying this, Robin Williams walks past, and one of the guys says, hey, Robin, Gary's doing a stand-up gig tonight. Do you want to come down? And he goes, oh, yeah, maybe. And that was it. I thought, oh, maybe? I'm thinking, what if he comes along? This would be horrendous. Because I suddenly thought, I don't want to die in front of Robin Williams.
Right.
Because then the next day it's going to be so awkward.
Yeah.
I'm going to be that guy.
The pressure's on.
Hey, stick to directing, and writing's always a good career move. Yeah. But secretly, I wanted him to come down because I thought, how awesome was that? And I remember Twitter had only just started, and someone tweeted. He arrived. He walked in, and Elijah Wood was there, and a couple of other cast members, and they were all kind of just sat up the back, and someone had tweeted, Robin Williams, Sugar Mill, just arrived. And suddenly the place is jammed, it's packed. And word had got out, I think I may have mentioned, maybe Robin Williams might come down. And so people were just coming down, just hoping that he was going to be there.
Yeah.
And he was just sitting up the back. And it was funny because Paul Garcia, I went on and I was so nervous. I would
imagine.
It was one of those classic moments where I'm just hiding in the stairwell.
Yeah.
Like I'm just in the stairwell just going, oh, fuck. And I'm thinking, okay, look, packed room. What can possibly go wrong? But it could go wrong.
Yeah.
I felt like it was like the first time I'd ever done stand up.
Right.
It was kind of, geez, this is going to be awkward. But it ended up going really well. It was almost impossible not to kill.
Yeah. The energy.
Yeah. And it's funny afterwards. Robin actually said to me, he goes, I didn't realize you were one of us.
Oh, nice.
Which is kind of a nice compliment, like part of the team. And the next day, he'd call you. It was really interesting. I really noticed a marked difference in, like, he'd call you boss when he's working. He calls everyone boss.
Right.
And he goes, we'd be doing some takes, and I'd say something, and yeah, boss. Like, he'd really give me his attention. Like, I kind of, like, he realized, I don't want to, disrespect Gary.
Right.
But yeah, so anyway, but the night he got up, so Paul Garcia's on stage, and he's this kind of this Mexican Latino comedian. Do you know? He's really funny.
I haven't seen him.
He seems like he doesn't have an act. Like he just has a Coke and he just talks and he's
just riffs.
But it just becomes this really funny act.
Right.
And he was going, Elijah Wood's in the audience, everybody. Elijah Wood, big round of applause for Elijah Wood. And he was like, yeah, Elijah Wood, he gets all the girls, Elijah Wood. He's just banging girls all the time. You know that ring? That's a cock ring. He puts it on his cock. Yeah. Can we swear on this? I think we can. Yeah. We do now. And then Elijah yells out, yeah, when it heats up, you can see the markings. And then Robin Williams is sitting right next to Elijah, and he starts doing Gollum, going, "My precious."
Yeah.
And then he stands up as Gollum, right, going, "My precious." Starts walking to the stage, and the whole audience just stands up like a standing.
Yeah,
applause,
wow,
right, you know.
yeah.
And it's a small
Yeah,
room.
small space. Yeah.
And he gets up there and just. It was really funny. Just as he gets up on stage, this woman down the front has to go to the toilet. And he's like, "Whoa, I just got here. And now you're leaving?" But it was amazing. And I remember months, probably a year later, even more, maybe a year later, he was on Letterman. And Letterman said, "Oh, so you're doing a tour of Australia. And I believe, when you were there last, you got up and did a gig." And I said,
Nice.
he said, "Yeah." And I kind of wonder if that was kind of the impetus.
Yeah, to get back out there.
And he was really sharp too, because he'd just come off an American tour. He'd done 64 gigs in a row.
Right.
And so he was kind of sharp.
match
in terms of he was very match fit. And so I think when he did that, I reckon when he did that little room, he went, "Yeah, I should do a tour of Australia."
Because I was on at that club. I was headlining the next week.
Loser!
And it was packed.
Is he coming back? Is he coming back?
And I get home like, "I'm sorry to disappoint you all. Robin ain't showing up tonight. You're stuck with me." But they were great. There was like, because in that room, like you pack them into that room. It's got the low ceiling. And But it was I felt like I was disappointing everyone by walking on stage. Yeah.
Because everyone would have been going, "Oh, maybe."
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously they were there because of that, because it was never normally that packed in that room, So it was like...
No, that's right. Oh, that's funny. I didn't know
the following week. Jeez, hard act to follow.
But
I met Robin a few times, and he was always just a genuinely just very focused, nice guy.
Yeah.
Like he came to see a show that Amazing Jonathan was doing just out of San Fran.
Oh, yeah. He would have loved that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they were around at the same time in San Francisco and Cobb's Comedy Club back in the day. And and Robin is such a because I was doing street performing at the time. I knew that I didn't actually know that at the point, because Robin was asking me. That's what he's the sort of person that asks you questions. Usually you would be the other way around, but he was genuinely interested. And I said, "Yeah, I do street performing." He goes, "Oh, I started off as street performing, and we're just going backwards and forwards." I said, "Yeah, I'd love to do it like on stage sometimes and sometime." And I remember him saying, he goes, "Streets, it's the best training. Stick with it."
Yeah, right.
So it's just very really. He said, "Yeah, if you can perform on the street, you can perform anywhere."
Yeah.
So it's just nice to have that little, encouragement from someone.
It's true, isn't it? Like you never forget those kind of little moments.
Yeah.
Like when someone says something, you go, "Oh wow, okay, he's saying it."
Yeah.
It's got to have some meaning. Yeah, I always found him to be. It was really interesting. Like when he was working on Happy Feet, like when you talk to him one-on-one, he's very humble, very quiet.
Yes, very soft-spoken.
Very
right?
soft-spoken. But as soon as someone would join the conversation,
it
was like he almost had like a comedy Tourette's. He could not control himself.
Right.
And it would just suddenly turn on. Now he's got a crowd. There's two people, and suddenly this routine, this it'd just be really funny. The banter was hilarious, and I thought, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." But when it says you and him.
Yeah,
there's no trying to be funny at all.
Right, yeah, very, and it felt like a very soulful connection. Like he would give you, like I said, his full attention. Like he was genuinely interested in connecting with you. Yeah, and then years later at the Rod Laver Arena, and the Umbilical Brothers were opening for.
They've done it a few times.
Yeah, and I went and saw the show, then caught up with Shane and Dave backstage. And I was on tour at the time with Arj Barker, and Arj was meant to come along, but then something happened where he didn't come along. And I'm talking with them about Arj, and then I hear Robin go, "Arj, it's Arj here!" And he runs over, and I said, "No, he couldn't make it." Man, because Arj was from the same area, from Marin County, the Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
And, so they would catch up at clubs over this club there in called Rockmorton or something, or Throckmorton or something.
So were they working at sort of live clubs at the same time?
No, just Robin would just pop in.
Oh, I see.
Throckmorton. It was this little theatre, Throckmorton it was called.
Right,
and it was and sometimes Arj and Robin would have a chat there. So, but it was like seeing Robin and then Arj really regretted it later on. I wish I'd gone that night.
Yeah.
Because that was the last, last time we would have seen
it. It is. I mean, we don't have it so much now in this country, but just that sort of pop into comedy clubs,
Yeah.
No one just sort of pops in. Like when I started you know, when you were young coming to see the shows, I mean, you just had the Comedy Store in the Harold Park. So everyone used to hang at the Harold Park.
Yes.
So there was that real sense of camaraderie, pop in.
There was,
You had no other choice. You had nowhere else
and
to
Robin
go.
Williams popped down there in the 90s at the Harold Park Hotel.
Years and years ago as well. So,
Yeah.
but now you don't get that so much. Like even comics in Australia that have made it just don't just pop in.
Yeah. I remember,
I don't know, maybe they
seeing
do.
Chris Rock, this over a decade ago, I think, when he first came out to Australia, and he did it at the that club in Glebe, not the Happy Endings, the other one that was the
Mike in Hand?
No.
Oh,
It was upstairs.
that didn't last.
No, but it was there for a few years. And Chris Rock just popped in and did a spot there, and I remember watching that. And I remember there was another comic that Chris Rock came in with these guys, these big, bodyguards, and he went and sat along the side area. Now, to get into the side area, you had to walk around behind the seats. And there was this comic trying to get behind there, and this big guy just standing there, just not budging, and the guy's just looking off to the side. This comic's in front of him. Can I just? I just wanted to. Can I? And he's obviously trying to get to Chris. Can I just? Can I? And he just looks at him and goes, "Can you leave me alone?" And then just looks back, and then he just scampers off.
Yeah. Because you made it when you got bodyguards to comedy gigs, haven't you?
But it's great watching him get up in that environment and just be relaxed Chris Rock. It wasn't the preacher Chris Rock kind of persona. He just had his phone and he's like leaning on the mic stand, he's flicking through the phone like, oh yeah, what about this idea?
Which is courageous, really, because I can't even do that now. Just get up there and just try
bits and pieces. And you feel the pressure.
Well, I kind of feel like I've got to be funny. I mean, maybe he's just thinking it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
he's just trying out ideas for this tour.
Yeah, gosh, it's bold, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah. But then you hear about like back in the day, like when someone like a Richard Pryor would get up at the Comedy Store and have nothing really, and Pryor's lost it, He just died on stage for an hour. But then, by the end of the week, he's killing with that same material that he's had that faith to go, I know there's something there,
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? Just having, I mean, I guess once you get to a level where, the audience is prepared to listen to some of the crap to get to the good stuff. Yes. But if you're crap from the very beginning, it's never going to eventuate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that's it is hard to get back up and just do stuff that you go, do I just commit to, like, I don't know about you, but if you do some new material, the most you're ever really going to do is a bit.
Yeah.
A few minutes.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sort of wedged in between two
solid you're not going to go out there and just commit to like a half an hour of brand new material. Because that's just so risky.
Yes.
Yes. And if you haven't got them in the first few minutes and the audience doesn't know you.
Yeah, they ain't going to go the journey.
Then you're gone.
Yeah.
It's just death.
So, have you ever? I've often thought about getting up and doing the open mic rooms again, just trying 5 minutes of new material, not doing anything, just getting up there and doing that.
Oh, I would love to do that. Yeah.
Well, what do you think is stopping you from doing that?
I'm just tired.
Yeah.
Kids, dinner. I'm like, do I really want to go out for 5 minutes? I got to drive, 40 minutes or whatever. Do I really want to do that?
It's a full night.
And where is it going? Why am I just doing? It's not like I'm developing a new hour that I'm going to tour the country and sell out around, and have sold out shows. That's a good motivation. Right. But just to go out and just develop 5 minutes that adds on to my existing material
plus,
whatever. It's like, well, do I really want to do that?
Yeah.
But I would. I've always thought about trying to open I'd love to open a room, like call it stand-up riff or something, but it's where you get 4 comics and you can only try new material that night. But the idea is that the comedian, you come on stage, you try your bit.
Right.
And we're all sitting kind of on stage. And then when you're finished, we can jump up and add to your material.
Oh, right. Yeah, nice.
But you keep the material. We're actually there to add.
You're like a pit stop team.
We're like a pit stop, but we're going, that bit Joel did, maybe you could have said, or you just continue
that's a great idea.
But that becomes and everyone does that to each other. So
and everyone would want to be getting up, like, man, Gary Eck gave me this payoff, which kills now.
Oh, and every now and then someone does give you a bit of material. Sometimes it's a comic, sometimes it's a punter.
Yeah,
it kind of says something, and you go, hey, that's a really good bit. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah, no, but once again, I'm like, oh, I've got to go start a room.
I got a family. I got to,
I know.
what am I doing?
I mean,
leaving.
I know that's the. I mean, that's the one thing in this industry. You just got to keep. I say, that sense of naivety. Just you got to just think everything is possible. And
Sure.
Because if in reality,
You think too much about it. You'd never. Yeah.
Well, the more experience you get, the harder you know everything is.
Yes.
Right? And so you know that
There is still something like that short film that I made the night in lockdown about Batman. I just thought it was during COVID. There's nothing else going on.
Yeah.
I thought of the idea. I thought I'll just write this thing. And I thought, why don't I just make this thing? It was like there's a lot of work that went into it.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. Like just so much. But it is that kind of just jump in and do it and. And if I had have thought too much about it, I probably wouldn't have done it. Initially.
Yeah, I mean, you're a bit like me. Once you start it, once you've written it, like I've written, I go, well, I've written it now. I might as well try and do something with it.
Sure.
It's like baking a cake. You don't just buy the eggs and the flour and then you just sit on the
Right.
bench and go, well, I won't make it.
Yeah.
You go, well, I've
I'm committed now.
I've got the eggs and the milk. I might as well make it now.
Yeah.
Well, I might as well put it in the oven. And so I kind of do that with stuff I start. Mm-hmm. And once I start, I kind of go down this rabbit hole. And you just got to hope that rabbit hole comes out and there's some sort of payoff.
Sure.
Because you can be in I'm in a couple of rabbit holes now. Projects where you're just going, this hole's getting quite deep.
With the film that you've been working on.
Oh yeah, like a sci-fi film.
Yes.
Yeah. It's still that's still going around in circles, but it keeps going forward. But you've got to just keep your pot's boiling.
Sure.
Because that boils and then another one.
Yeah, another one
comes up and you go, oh, actually that's got more legs.
Sure.
Might run with that.
Well, speaking of films,
yes.
That brings us to your favourite album.
Oh, the album. Oh, this is the actual podcast. We've been talking for 8 hours.
The album that you have. Now, it's not a normal. Usually, someone would pick music.
Yeah.
But you have picked a very unique. Now, I'll let you take it from here. You give us the lead into this album.
Well, I don't know what happened to this album, but when I was young, I reckon around 12, I was in the record store and I was just looking at stuff and they just had a section. It was kind of like the miscellaneous section, when they don't quite know. Yeah,
does this go? It wouldn't go in spoken word. It's not in soundtrack.
What is it? Or no one's. And it was just this one record, and it was the BBC. Horror sound effects record, volume 13. I don't know what's happened to it, but it is on eBay, and I know you looked it up as well. Yeah. And I just, that was the cover of it, if you want to see it.
It is the warped cover. You got like a King Kong kind of character, a warped face, Dracula, Alien. Yeah, it was Grim Reaper, everything on the cover.
I think they had multiple different covers, but I saw this and I was like, oh, what is this? This is sound effects. Oh, that sounds really cool. Like I wasn't really interested in bands and music. I wasn't really following anyone.
Right.
But I was always thinking of stuff like this.
No, but so this sparked your initial interest in film, or you already had that interest in film?
No, I think I kind of I liked film, but I liked comedy. And this just to me, even though it's like death and horror, it kind of was comedy in a sense. And I mean, this is the back. And I remember just turning it over. And I'll put my glasses on because I got to wear glasses now. So I'm like 12 years old, I'm in the record store and I've got this album and I think, what? This is, and then, this is side one. It's like execution and torture. Side one, it's like...
You're like, this is my kind of stuff.
Yeah, the guillotine, arm chopped off. Track 3, head chopped off. 4, sawing head off. 5, leg chopped off. 6, neck twisted and broken. Like not just
twisted.
Yeah, and I'm reading this going, what? And then arm broken, and and then there's like 10 is like red hot poker in the eye, which is so specific. It's like, imagine working on this album. Hey Jim, how you going with the red hot poker? And I'm just getting there, babe. I'm just putting it to someone's abdomen at the moment. And I thought, this is unreal. And then I read here, it's like, for those interested, I'm like, yes, I'm very interested. The more grisly sound effects, such as, chopping of heads, breaking necks, and the stake through the heart effect were made by mistreating large white cabbages.
Mistreating.
I love that, mistreating. Like just locking the cabbage. Locking the cabbage in a cupboard for 6 months. I'm not letting you out until I chop you up into pieces. So I took. I said I've got to get this. I've got to buy this, and I bought it, and I honestly would just listen to this, and I would. It's on.
You'd
YouTube.
be like in your room with the vinyl record, and your parents are like, "Where's Gary?"
No. We didn't have a vinyl record. It's in the lounge room. Everyone's listening. Everyone has to listen.
So the whole family.
Well, check this out. Look at this strangulation. So on side 2 starts with vocal effects and heartbeats. So track 1 is strangulation. Track 2 is 1 scream, male. Track 3, 2 screams, male. And then 4 is 3 men screaming.
Fantastic.
And it's
harmonious scream.
Yeah, just screams and sobbing. It's like 1 woman sobbing, 2 women sobbing. It's like my comedy act. But and I just thought, this, and I would just play this, and it was just, I thought, this is brilliant. I mean, this was kind of comedy, and I remember trying to do little sketches myself. So I would get 2 tape decks, and so I would record this onto a tape deck, and then do some voice and sketch, and then have kaboom, kaboom, kaboom.
Get away from that poker! Don't.
Yeah, and they had a fire. The firing squad was good. It was an actual corps firing squad, commands and volley. So attention!
Yeah. Rifles!
Yeah, rifles. It was a whole thing. So that was kind of like a whole sketch in itself. So I think just that idea, I think I always loved sketches, and I think this just was like, wow, this is...
You can bring it to life.
I can bring a whole world.
Yeah.
So that was my kind of... it was like, you know what? This was my sort of start to kind of creating kind of weird comedy sketches.
You know,
and stuff.
the Amazing Jonathan would have loved that.
He would love it.
That is so up his alley.
But you can. It's on YouTube because I looked it up on YouTube. Someone's put the
that.
whole album, and it's quite crackly, which makes it even more interesting.
Yes.
And so you're just hearing.
Now, does it explain what it is beforehand, or do you have
No,
to?
no.
Coming up next.
No.
It's just one after the other.
There's a little beat, and then one after the other.
Right. So you got to have the album to understand.
Oh yeah.
How did he achieve? That's the cabbage technique.
Well, I was listening to it before you came. I just had this in my hand, and I'm listening on YouTube, just hearing creaky door closes, creaky door opens. But they're really good sound effects. I mean, this is genuine Foley. This is someone who's, and a group of people.
Yeah, professional BBC production. So a lot of these would have been used in a lot of...
Oh, totally. And I was always amazed. I was like, wow, so just like you get a meat cleaver and slice a cabbage, that is the same as cutting someone's arm off.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that just sounds so real. Mm-hmm. So, I'm getting the cabbage going.
So you would test some of these out as a kid as well?
Well, getting spaghetti. So you would get spaghetti and
dry
spaghetti and you'd crack it. So that would kind of create a broken neck effect.
Right.
So I was like, this is gold.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So you would recreate what you...
I was kind of tempted. I was like, this is my science project.
Yeah.
Gary's kind of creating...
Because you see that with the old productions, like behind the scenes thing, they've got like rice in a pan, making certain sounds and different... It looked like Peter Russell Clark, it was like a whole kitchen set of different vegetables and...
And the person doing it is always so serious. Yeah. They're really concentrating. It's like they're reading music, but they're just reading sound effects. Yeah. It's like neck broken. Walking on steps, door opening.
Right, so that would have been like the live radio plays, and they had those people set up like.
I reckon they would have used that for sure, because this came out this album I think came out in 1977, the original.
Right.
So, which is volume 13. So that gives you an idea.
It's going a long time.
It's going way back.
Yeah, so really the 60s.
And there's different BBC. This is like horror sound effects, and there's there's different
sci-fi sound effects and.
Dog just popped back in.
Oh yeah.
Hello, Sisu.
Oh, look at that. We just got a spike in viewership.
Yeah, we just got a spike. You can't have... That's just gorgeous, isn't it? Like, look at that.
Come on.
Look at that.
Beautiful.
Little
Ewok.
What were we saying?
Yeah, so, the amount of other other titles that they had in the,
Oh
in the
yeah,
series.
yeah. There was like every single one. I mean, and that's probably what they've done. They've just recorded. It's kind of weird, isn't it? It's like the Foley artists at the BBC going, "Look, no one ever thinks about us."
Yeah,
You know? Like,
we need to get some. We need to get on a podcast. We need to have someone's favorite album one day.
but just the idea that it actually must have sold because they did
Sure.
13 volumes.
I researched that online. There are a lot of there's a lot of titles.
But back then, people must have been buying them. Like, oh yeah, I must get that BBC sound
sure.
effects.
And people
Volume 1, where
I went
legs
into
explodes.
I went into a few record stores. I go, oh, I know that album.
Really?
Yeah, nah, but we I haven't seen it in a while. But yeah, I know the album you're talking about.
I don't know whatever happened to it. I think my parents threw it out or something. It's like, oh yeah.
We heard enough of this when Gary was a kid.
Yeah, but I should have kept it. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But,
Well, something that you have also taken from your childhood
Yeah.
as a favourite film,
totally.
as a selection, none other than Flying High.
Yeah, well, they called it Airplane.
Which for
Yeah.
our people in America or England overseas listening, it was called Aeroplane in the States, and they called it Flying High here. The reason for that,
Why is it?
well, they had a film which was about the Concorde, and it was called sort of Concorde Airplane something or other. That was the name of the film. Now they weren't releasing, because remember in the States they would release films,
Yeah,
and then we'd get it like a year later here in Australia.
totally, yeah.
And so they were releasing that film about the Concorde, which had airplane in the title, and they didn't want to release Airplane here, so they changed it to Flying High because they thought it would be too confusing for
Right.
the.
So where's Flying? Like, why Flying High? I've always wondered that.
Well, that was just the name that they came up with to replace it. It wasn't.
But I wonder who came up with that name.
I guess someone from from the American studio, which I think is a better title than Airplane.
It is, well, only probably because we're used to it.
We know
I
it.
mean, if you
yeah.
didn't know Flying High, you'd probably go, that's a dumb title. Flying
Right,
High, what is
right.
it? But it is kind
But
of funny.
Flying High feels like, and maybe because we
it
grew
feels
up
comedy,
on it,
yeah.
it feels more comedic. Yeah.
But I think because in America, Airplane was parodying a film called Airplane, wasn't it?
No, there was another name for it. It was shot in black and white. I forget the name for that film,
okay.
but yeah, they had apparently they had to buy the rights to that film
To make
because
the
it
film.
was so like people even had food poisoning. on
Yeah,
this
so
original.
they're taking the original story.
They're taking the
right?
original, but just taking the piss out of it,
That's
basically.
funny.
But so they bought the rights for that film in order to not be, run into any litigation, and they just rewrote
okay.
it from a comedic perspective.
Because it actually, as a film, it actually, like, forgetting the comedy, it actually works
As a narrative,
structurally
yes.
as a film. Like,
Yes.
it's got all the elements of suspense and structure and, the classic 3-act structure. And, is he going to, it's all about, they're going to land the plane and the romance.
Will the love, will the connection,
Yeah.
will they get back together? And
Yeah, so, it plays really well as a story.
yes.
Um,
And that's probably why it holds up so well, because
Yeah.
it does have that narrative arc to it, but within it, all the great comedic, little sort of standalone moments that work.
It's interesting because they don't kind of make these kind of films anymore, like in terms of that full film narrative silly film like
Right.
this, where it goes for the whole.
Well, we had afterwards we had some classics.
Well,
like
I mean,
the Zucker brothers doing the Naked Gun
Yeah.
films. And then they did like the scary movie ones and stuff, but I don't think
But the problem with that, they became parodies and sketches almost.
Right.
It wasn't, and it was kind of like they would cast people who were kind of funny and jokey.
Yes,
There was no juxtaposition between, because I learned a lot. I remember the reason I loved this so much, I would have been like 10, 11. I was doing a paper run after school, and I was earning like $33 a week, right? So I was loaded. And all the paper boys used to go, we'd catch a train into George Street, and we'd go to McDonald's and see a film.
Yeah.
And
Back when George Street was like, you had to have some friends to go there. It was dodgy.
That was dodgy, but that was the only kind of hub. Of,
Yes,
like,
you had Hoyt's, Greater Union, and
Yeah,
Village.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
McDonald's was right opposite.
Yes, and you never went under down under because you'd get rolled down.
Oh
there.
yeah, totally.
I remember
I was only like 10, so no one ever did that sort of stuff. But yeah, and I remember Flying High was on, and I didn't know anything about this film. And I just went and saw it, and was with a couple of mates. I was just like, oh my god, this is so funny. I was like, where has this been? This is just hilarious, And I was like, and then the next week I thought, I'm going to go buy and watch it myself again.
Yeah.
So I went in and just watched it again.
Great.
And I just always remembered, things struck with me, like just the kind of that, it was one of those first films to do a running gag or callback.
Sure. Yeah,
Like,
you can't.
Oh no, I was just saying that in the opening film when Stryker arrives at the airport and he arrives in a cab and he jumps out of the cab and then he ends up on the plane. And then right at the end of the film, they cut to the cab driver still waiting. And then the meter's ticking over. He's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
I just thought, that was just comedy gold.
And the Lloyd Bridges character, when he's always like, I picked the worst week to give up coffee, and it just gets worse as it goes along.
Worst week to give up amphetamines. Worst week to sniff glue. It was all cast so well, and they're playing it so straight.
And Leslie Nelson, pitch perfect.
Ah, yeah, totally. Yeah,
as the doctor.
Is there a doctor on board? Yes, Yes, I think the gentleman next to me is a doctor, and he's got his stethoscope in. Yes, I'm a doctor. The comedy. Some of the jokes you probably couldn't do today.
Yeah, there
was
the two jive talking.
Jive talking.
But that was more of a parody on that sort of style of talking in that era. It wasn't really so much a racial.
No, but even when little Jimmy comes into the cockpit, Jimmy ever seen a grown man naked?
Yeah. You ever been to in the bathing house with other naked men?
Yeah, you ever been to a Turkish prison?
Yeah.
Do you like gladiator films?
That's right. Yeah.
Like there was real that stuff which you wouldn't do today.
No.
Or was this? I don't know if you remember where this lady's really hysterical and the flight attendant comes up, she's shaking. She's get a hold of yourself. And then what's his name? Leslie Nielsen's character goes, I'll take care of this. And then he starts shaking it, and he slaps her. And then someone else wants to have a go, and then just before he leaves, he slaps her again. And then there's a whole row.
A whole load of guys got boxing gloves on, a lady with a metal pipe.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't do that now, just because of that sort of violence against women,
abuse.
Abuse. You wouldn't, even though the gag was hilarious at the time. Thinking, that was gold. But, some of the other stuff is just as funny. They always did that gag of, we need to get this person to a hospital. A hospital? What is it? It's a big building with patients. But that's not important right now. I used to love that.
But it's like throughout, they use that gag.
Yeah, they do. That's right.
Yeah.
We need to get to the headquarters. What is it? It's a place with generals usually hang out. But that's not important right now.
Yeah. Surely you can't be serious. I am, and don't call me Shirley.
I know, it's like comedy gold. And I used to just...
It's very dense. With jokes in that film, like they crammed so much into these short scenes. It was like, and if you didn't like that joke, don't worry, we got another one coming right behind it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was just a real bang for your buck.
Just just silly jokes. Like it's okay. They're working with instruments, and they cut to the cockpit, and they're all just playing jazz. But it's weird because it would have been it was a few years later, and I was at home. I'd split my lip doing gymnastics, at school, we were talking about this before, just crazy things teachers let you do. Like they were letting us, like we had like a mini trampoline, and the whole thing was to jump off the trampoline over the high jump bar and try and somersault over the high jump bar. And the teachers are like, okay, who's next? Like totally encouraging this, and I'm like, have a go, and then I sort of I somersaulted over, and I kneed my mouth and split my lip open, so I had to go to hospital and get stitches. And so anyway, I came home, my brother comes home, he's like, he goes, here, you can watch this. And it was a copy of Kentucky Fried Movie, which was the
first one, the Zucker Brothers.
The Zucker Brothers, which was also a live stage show. So that started off as a live sketch comedy show, and then someone came along, I forgot what's the producer's name, came along and saw it, and he was a director as well. But anyway, he saw the live sketch show and said, you should guys turn this into a film.
Right.
And so they turned the live sketch show. It's kind of like what we were trying to do with All Aussie Abufta into kind of, a pilot, and then a TV show, then a film. Yeah, and then so that became Kentucky Fried Movie. And I remember just watching this, and it was so funny. Have you seen it?
No. I remember seeing the cover for it when I was a kid, but for some reason I never saw it.
They kind of it was just a parody of kind of everything. So they kind of parodied, they did this, the one running kind of short sort of film was a parody of Bruce Lee. So they had this
Right.
guy doing Bruce Lee,
Right.
and it was really funny. Like he'd be in this room talking to this girl, and they'd be talking. And he'd go shh, and he'd sort of point to a pot plant. There's a little microphone. We must be, and then they keep talking. He's like shh, and he points, and there's this other little hidden microphone. And then it keeps going till eventually he's like shh, and he points, and there's a guy with a full boom, just like recording them. Like he's been there the whole time. And I remember just seeing that going, oh, geez, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that absurdist kind of humor.
Sure.
And I think had I not, I think if I'd grown up in America, I think I would have gone down that trajectory, in that sense of creating those kind of films.
Yeah.
Because there was more opportunity, because those kind of ideas require budgets as well. Because, often the gag is it's got to be a big group of people, or, it's got to be a big scene. Because it's often the scene is outrageous, the performances are serious and straight.
Sure.
But to create the outrageous scene,
You need a big budget. The magnitude of it is what,
that's the
is
gag.
what pays off. Like they've gone to this much trouble.
Yeah. Whereas in this country, it was always hard to do that with no budgets.
Sure.
We never had any sort of money to kind of create that stuff, so you couldn't do that kind of real absurdist stuff as well, which I used to love, and I think I used to dream, I'd love to work on one of those films. I'd love to, and it's funny because Seth MacFarlane is now producing, and they're in pre-production now of doing a reboot of Naked Gun.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so they've got the original writers like David Zucker and Pat Croft. I don't think Jerry Zucker, his brother, is working on it. But yeah, so they're doing a reboot.
God, they'll have to cast that well.
Well, have a guess who's playing, it's Frank Drebin's son, Frank Drebin Jr.
You need someone straight. Like I was going to say Will Ferrell or something, but no, you need a...
No, he's almost too comedic.
Yeah, you need someone dry and
there
straight.
is a perfect... In fact, when I saw it, I went, oh yeah, this guy.
Who is it?
So it's Liam Neeson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see
he's
that.
He's kind of older, but...
Yeah, no, I can see that.
But he's good at kind of comedy.
Did you see him on the Ricky Gervais one?
Yeah, he was hilarious.
I write lists.
Yeah. And I reckon that's probably why they thought of him. They went, he's so straight, serious, but there's kind of...
Yeah, I can see that working.
You know.
But Leslie Nelson, he was just like, in all the old interviews, he always had that little hand fart machine that he would do and just never break character. It was, brilliant.
Yeah, classic comedy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like classic comedy gold.
And do you think that influenced you, like, in becoming a comedian, having that as your favorite film when you were younger?
I think it introduced me to that sort of comedy. I love that kind of crazy comedy, and I think it definitely influenced that idea of like outrageous situation, keep it straight.
Right.
And everything I kind of do in terms of the short films I made, even like The Money. It was done really seriously, but the situation was ridiculous. The guy's about to get shot, and his mate calls him on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So it's a fantastical idea, but I'm never treating it as a joke.
No.
And I kind of, when I remember watching those films, even though they get a bit silly, I always admired that they never gave in to the joke.
No.
They never admitted to the joke. That's why the latest Scream films never worked, because the actors knew it was a joke. Almost. They're playing it like a joke. They're in on the joke. Yeah. That doesn't work.
That's one thing I was very aware of when doing the Batman short film I did like that.
Yeah, which is great.
Don't want to forsake the character.
Yeah.
Maintain the character's integrity. Even put him, whatever situation you put him in, just maintain that integrity. And actually the Carl Newman, who did, he was the movement double for Michael Keaton in the '89 Batman.
Oh, okay.
He saw my.
Oh, he saw yours.
And reached out to me.
No way.
And he says, I really appreciate the way that this is, it's hilarious, laugh so much, but you always maintain the integrity of the character.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I've got like a tick of approval from one of the
But that's
originals.
the key. That's that's where the comedy is. That's where the heart is.
Totally. You start playing him for laughs, and the whole thing's dead.
Yeah. And then it's like, wait a minute, it's almost like the audience feels robbed.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, hang on, now you're treating it as a joke.
Yes.
I thought this was I know it's a joke.
Yes.
But it's much more an illusion if it feels real.
Yeah. You haven't broken character.
No, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, speaking of more comedy, we move on to your selection.
Yeah, I know. Look, this is so lowbrow.
It ain't Tolstoy or Dostoevsky.
Socrates.
But
comedically,
it's up there.
I did choose, it's funny, do I choose, Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus*, which I do love his books. Do you know who he is? Yeah. I do have them all on the shelf, so I could have, Bill Bryson.
You're clearly very well read by all the classic selections that you have up there.
I do love Bill Bryson, and I do love Yuval Noah Harari, because, but I was like, what influenced me as a kid when I was young? What made me laugh? And when I look at, say, Flying High and Naked Gun series and Big Laughs and Kentucky Fried Movie, where I was just like real hard laughter. The only other time that happened again with a book was when my brother came back from the States. I can't remember if it was Volume 1, Gallery 2, or this one, but he said, "Oh, you should read this. It's really funny." And I was like, "Oh, right." And I remember flicking through and going, "Oh, it's cartoons, And you'd see a lot of cartoons in paper, and they were never funny. People used to rave about Garfield, going, "It's hilarious," and I'd read Garfield and go, "This is
Peanuts.
the Peanuts. This is not funny. This is stupid." And I kind of had that in my back of my mind. And I remember just opening it up, and then I should put my glasses on and go and read it. And I remember just like going, "What?" And then and reading each one, going, "This is hilarious. Oh my God, these are genius," and just crying with laughter. And it's kind of like once you got into it...
Yeah, and you get on that wavelength.
You got on that wavelength, Mom, Darren's dried his bed again. There we go.
Yeah. Fish in a bowl.
Fish in a bowl, yeah. And then, the classic bummer of the birthmark howl.
Yeah, with the tattoo on the beers. Yeah. The target. There's some iconic ones that really stand out, like the one, what was it, the School for the Gifted?
The push and pull.
And then he's pushing on the pull door. Yeah.
Yeah, all those.
And I remember one, I was laughing so hard when I was a kid looking at one where I had all the cars driving up and it said, "Look out ahead," and they're driving up this cliff face, but then it's just a drop of it, and all the cars are smashed into a big pile. I was just thinking that was hilarious.
I remember reading Gary Larson saying, things that people would complain about.
Right.
Like, in some
taking
woman,
offence to some...
Yeah. And often it was because they didn't understand the joke.
Right.
But this one woman had offence to... it was alligators bobbing for babies. Do you remember that one?
No.
Do you remember the game where you bob for apples?
Yeah, apples. Yeah.
But it was alligators in the game. It was like at a kid's party, but they're alligators.
And they're bobbing
for babies, and the babies...
So some lady took offence to
I
that.
just totally took offence. But, he was like... just look at the joke. I mean, it's not real.
Yeah, have a look. This is a drawing,
It's just a drawing, and I mean, you can't not be going, "Oh, well, that's offensive." Who's it offensive to?
Yeah.
Like to babies or to alligators?
Babies don't even get it.
I know, that's right. The people, they're going to get offended. They don't care. But, I mean, it's phenomenal, really. I look at this guy's work. And his name is Gary.
Yeah, there you go. There's your connection.
I'm actually thinking of doing a...
Well, you have a book. You've released a kid's book.
Yeah. What? You're kidding. Here it is here.
Oh my goodness. You've got it already.
This wasn't planned, honestly. It wasn't planned, but this was just happened to be sitting over there.
I like how you put it over there, the other side of the room, as opposed to it just happened to be sitting there.
No, to be honest, I wasn't even going to mention this. And then when we started this interview, I was like, "Oh, my book's over there." Yeah. And it just coincidental. Yeah, so this is a kid's book called The Day the Moon Came to Stay.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it is beautiful. It's illustrated by Nico Sutherland, who we collaborate on a few projects like Vegisaurs. We've got an animation series, which is in third season now, or in our third season of production. Yeah, so it's it's done really well around the world. It's like the number two show on the BBC, just behind Bluey.
Fantastic!
Yeah.
Wow.
Like literally, we're like a massive hit on the BBC.
That's great.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. I mean, and in fact...
Well, it brings it full circle back to the BBC.
It does, doesn't it? It does, doesn't it? Yeah, I've got this real connection.
Yeah.
I do actually have this kind of weird, bizarre connection with the BBC.
So this book is out in stores, right?
Yeah, it is. It's in most bookstores. Not all bookstores have them. And you know what I honestly do? I go into bookstores, right, and I say, "Do you have The Day the Moon Came to Stay?" And I know they don't because I've had a look.
Right.
And they look it up on the computer and they go, "Oh, no, we don't. Do you want to order one?" And then I say, "Well, actually, I'm the author. My name's Gary Eck, and it'd be great if you could order some in."
Yeah, it's a great book.
And they all go, "Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, no, we'll get a few in for sure."
Oh.
And And I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute, I should just ring every single bookstore.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, why isn't the publisher ringing every single bookstore?
Yeah.
Because some have and then some don't. I'm thinking, well, why didn't the one, why doesn't this one have it?
Yeah.
I feel kind of slightly rejected sometimes.
Well, then it's great you're going in person. And,
Yeah, no, people really react to it.
And who's doing that these days? It's probably like, who thinks to do that? It's a great, old-fashioned way of just, hey, I wrote this book. It's really popular. Why not get it?
And it is a beautiful book. I mean, it's about a little boy who looks up to the night sky and he sees the moon. It seems sad, so he writes a message on a paper aeroplane and throws it to the moon and invites the moon to stay. And it does. And then the whole world goes kind of topsy-turvy. But it's interesting because I remember I think I was holding my son. It was nighttime. It was a big moon and we're outside. He's like 2 and he's trying to grab the moon.
I'll reach at it. Yeah.
And I kind of thought, that's really funny. He thinks the moon is that big.
Right.
It's like there's no sense of perspective yet.
Like a ball.
He has no idea that the moon is like, how far away is the moon? 300,000 kilometers or something. And is actually really massive. And then I thought, imagine if the moon was kind of like that size, like if it was what a kid kind of imagines it to be.
Yeah.
And if it did come, what would happen? And
so he hangs out with the moon. And
he hangs out with the moon. Of course, they go to the beach, and then the tides start coming in because it affects the tides.
Yep.
And then they go to a park, and dogs are howling. Astronauts are landing on it, and then the moon's having such a great time. But of course, it has to go back before sunset, but it doesn't want to go.
Yeah, he has this bond with this child.
Yeah, bond with the child, but it also a sense of purpose because there is a message to this book. The moon doesn't think it has a purpose, a reason. It doesn't feel like it has any special anything.
But then once the tidal wave starts...
Once it realizes, and Billy points out, there's this big page at the end where the whole world's chaos, and he's saying, you have to go back.
Yeah.
Look, if you don't go home, our world will turn topsy-turvy. You made things work, the tides, the time, everything. Earth really needs you up there. But then the moon says, I'll think about it. It's funny, I did a gig just on Saturday, and I do this gag where I plug the book, and I say it's... I wrote it for my daughter, and tonight she was really upset. I said, "What is it, sweetie?" And she said, "I'm just worried that everyone at your show won't go out and buy a book." Have you heard me do this? And then I say, "Oh, you can't expect everyone to buy one." And then this tear rolled down her face, and she said, "But Daddy," and then I go on. I said, "You know what? We're gonna get you that kidney. Okay? You hang in there, sweetie. Even though you've got 2, it's always good to have a spare. Daddy's got 7." And it became a bit, so I kind of do it, but it's a good way to promote it. And then I've already done like 45 minutes set, and then I've done this gag, and then someone yells out, "Read the book." And I was like, you're gonna go read the book. I thought, you want to hear the book? And so I read the book, and honestly, even after 45 minutes, the room just goes silent. And you can almost feel people walk in, because I think people just love hearing stories.
Sure.
Even like
sure.
a children's
Even a child story. Sure. But there's always, with every child story, there's always a bigger idea to take away from it.
Yeah, no, true. I just think, and I was reading it. I'm doing jokes. I'm going. I can't believe I'm still reading this, and you guys are still here. You're more interested in this than my show.
What happens next?
Yeah.
Turn the page.
Turn the page, and I read the whole thing, and then, then I said afterwards, I said, I'm going to say you're going to buy the book, and you'll go, nah, because I've already heard it. Some dickhead just read it to me. It's probably true, but yeah, no, it is. I'm actually really proud of this book. So it's hopefully one day we'll turn it into an animation as well.
Sure, you'll get another great BBC success.
Well, yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Or I wouldn't turn it into a series. I'd turn it into like a short feature or something like that.
Well, I heard that the BBC are looking for a great new musical based on the Village People.
Are they?
So I think
that'd be good.
That is the next step for you, Mr. Eck.
If that becomes a musical, that would... it feels like everything's kind of complete. It's gone full circle.
Sure, yeah.
And that's why I always say, nothing ever goes away. That's why I say everything's worth doing, even if it doesn't become a hit, because it comes back somehow.
Sure, sure.
And that would be brilliant. That's 20 years since that film came out. If somehow it evolved and became a hit
and
musical.
To get you 3 creative minds of Anthony Murr, Art Malsali, Gary Eck back together in the same room,
And this young 28 software engineer.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny, he's probably going to listen to this podcast as well.
Well, we've already started the documentary.
The documentary, we've got it.
We've begun it.
We should actually. That's funny. You should do the documentary.
Well, I look forward to seeing what's next for you, Gary.
Oh, thanks, Joel.
Great
Thank you
chatting
so
with you,
much.
buddy.
Thank you, buddy.
it was
Yeah,
a
it's
pleasure,
great.
mate.